Welcome to one of the most curious vehicles you will ever see. This is the Zeekr 009 ultra luxury people mover. It's Chinese, fully electric, got business class seating inside. It'll accelerate faster than a V8 Ford Mustang, and as you can see, has utterly cosmic styling. I'd have laughed in your face if 10 years ago you'd have told me I'd be reviewing a $136,000 electrified luxury people mover from China that does 100 kilometers an hour in 4.5 seconds, despite weighing almost 3 tons. Yet here we are. Okay, we're going to give you a good look around this mad Zeekr. I'm going to be taking you through it. We'll be driving it up front and also showing you what it's like to ride in the most important place of all in this car, and that is the mid-row seats.
Chasing cars. Honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
Budget Direct.
So what the hell is Zeekr? Well, it's a silly name, isn't it? But it's owned by Geely, which also brings us Volvo and Polestar. Now this 009, it is of course a fully electric MPV, and it has a giant 116 kilowatt hour battery that adds to the weight of course, and its claimed range is nearly 600 kilometers. If you're chasing a vehicle that looks like nothing else, then look no further, here it is. If you look at the front grille area, it's nicely color coded actually. In China they have giant chrome up here, and I think it is an improvement to have it color coded. Although you do have this sort of waterfall chromy plastic through here, and also this chromy plastic bottom bit and the bumper. I'm not quite sure how that's going to weather or take hits actually, considering how low to the ground it all looks. Now the headlights, they're quite funky as well. They're almost like claws, I reckon, and LEDs through those. And if you see these wheels, they're also pretty mad, aren't they? They're 20 inches and also look an absolute knuckle breaker to clean. But at least they're shod in Michelin Pilot sport tyres, which is really handy considering the performance of this thing. It's an imposing big vehicle, but what I really like is the size of these windows. That's going to make everything light and beautiful inside. A bit more chrome work through here. The whole size of this thing is 5.2 meters long, and the wheelbase 3.2 meters long for proper cabin space. And of course, just a quick tug on that electrically side opens both sides as well for easy access. If anything, the rear end is a little bit plain compared to the rest of the car, but you do get this lovely light bar running the stretch of it, more LEDs for the side lights, and all this panel will light up as well at night time. And all importantly, for an MPV, is what we get in the back, and it's not altogether brilliant news for this 009. As a people mover, what you really need is plenty of luggage space if you're carting 5 or 7 people around, and it's not great news back here. And part of the reason is, unlike something like a Kia Carnival, which has a really big hole in the floor, back here, if I lift this area up, we're stuck with air suspension and electric gubbins. That's really compromising our space. But imagine if you're just taking 2 passengers and you fold these rearmost seats down. So that buys you a hell of a lot more luggage space, but it's still not a flat floor like something like a Kia Carnival will do, where these rear seats fold right into the floor. And with those back seats down, you now can't use the middle row seats in their business class fully reclined way. So again, it's not the best packaging you're going to see in a people mover. The front end storage isn't going to save you either for such a big car. The frunk is pretty small, but at least it's something. In here you just keep your tyre repair kit, and you can even sneak in a few supplies as well. This is absolutely the worst seat in the house. Not because it's in any way terrible, but because you actually just want to be partying or chilling in the back of this fun bus. But even so, I'll let you know what it's like up front. So the first thing that greets you is this ginormous windscreen, and they've really cleverly divided the A-pillars so you've got extra glass in between those for fantastic visibility. It's absolutely brilliant. Now in front of me I've got a 10.25-inch digital driver's display, which in any other car would look quite big, but because this is beside a giant 15-inch infotainment screen, it's actually quite the tiddler. This screen, I've been playing with it, it's absolutely superb. You must say this of the Chinese, they have brought an incredibly higher level of game when it comes to this audio-visual stuff. Clever things, I can just adjust the air suspension in the car through my screen just very simply, and then I can just go into a menu and I'm able to control how comfortable the people in the back are. So I'd imagine if you've got high-class clientele back there, they don't want to do anything as vulgar as pressing their own air conditioning button, so I can adjust the temperature at their request. My Napa leather seats, they are gorgeously comfortable, so you're not hard done by in that regard. They're also ventilated, heated and massage as well. Now, a few grumbles that I do have, I'm not in love with this steering wheel. I think it feels a little bit cheap and plasticky in the middle. And this is the key that Zeekr gives you, and it seems to need to sit here where your wireless charging would be to sometimes start the car. And if you leave it there, as soon as you go around the first corner, it just flies out into the footwell of the passenger seat. So I find this particularly stupid. But otherwise, it's a grand, massive, opulent, luxurious front seat. But really, you just don't want to be up here. You want to hire someone to sit where I am now and get yourself in the back for some fun. There's your obvious things like wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, but some of the menus you can explore through this, absolutely fantastic. So I'm just scrolling around the whole vehicle and it's giving me little shortcut menus so I can make my adjustments, even something like just from this button, just closing the panoramic sunroof. And then into my cameras, if I can find them. The camera system's again superb. You've just got one in absolutely every corner of the vehicle, so you've got absolutely no excuses for curbing those wheels as you go into your 5-star hotels. Through the screen, you can adjust all your cooling, heating to any of these seats. You can also do the rear sun blinds, the smart screen that comes down from the roof, and then all these different sub-menus to change exactly what your passengers may want. It really is an absolute tech delight. It would take forever to explore and learn everything, but once you've nailed it, you're going to be the best chauffeur in town. You're going to get a hell of a lot of business. So if you're going to use this as a family car, if you haven't already got over the line with the kids for all the luxury in the back, it also got video games as well. So you can even imagine your chauffeur, if you're doing your electric vehicle charging, you can just stop and play mindless games as well as watching TikTok, YouTube, or anything like Netflix. It's just mind-blowing. Any doubts about this car are quickly dispelled when you get into the middle row. Oh my God, it is just the most luxurious thing. You think for the price of, say, an entry-level X5, you could get this kind of luxury travel. So I suppose if you really want to spoil your kids, this is the way to do it. So you can see I'm in these captain's chairs. This is a 7-seat version. You can get a 6-seat version as well. That's a 2+2. But this one makes sure it's got captain's chairs rather than 3 across the middle because you're so important. You don't want to be too close to the person beside you. And look at this. I want to show you just how lovely this leather is. This is all Napa leather throughout, and it does feel magnificent. Fair play to Zeekr. They've done a great job of giving you the luxury experience. Now, out of the 4 different color choices you can get much more practical black, but the other 3 are all quite light, which look fantastic right now. But even after just a few thousand kilometers of this car, I can see the grubby fingerprints that have gone through this suede here. So that's something to be very conscious of if you're going to be getting one of these in the light color. Whereas it's incredibly comfortable as I'm sat now, this is not exactly how you want to be. You want to move this thing into lounge mode. One thing I definitely recommend is getting a short-statured chauffeur, because if they move their seat fully forward, I can raise my leg rest and just about get the fully reclined situation, which is rather lovely. Now, there's so many cool things in the back of this thing. I'm going to try and show you as many as possible. For starters, these seats are heated, they're climate controlled and massage as well, and 14-way power adjust. And if I just rest back, I love seeing all this lovely suede work all the way through the vehicle's headlining and the sides. It's just absolutely coated in the stuff. And then giant panoramic roof above me as well. So it's just a lovely way to recline back. You don't get that in a business class airline seat, do you? These windows are absolutely massive for your journey, and also have these manual pull down screens as well to keep the harsh sunlight out. And look how cool this is. This is where your climate control is. So that just sets as a clock normally as a pad, but then I can just filter through my temperature and fan speed. And that's just a really nice thing to have going on. And also your windows, all these nice little touch buttons as well. Such cool stuff. Now, I want to show you in here, in the side of this seat, look at that remote control for the television, which is going to pop down from the ceiling. Because you need properly entertained back here, don't you? So I've got a 17-inch screen up here, and I'm able just to filter through. I've got 5G internet connection and a range of streaming services. So you are completely spoilt back here, aren't you? Although there is the higher grade than this one for another 5 or 6 grand, and that adds things like underleg heating and also ambient lighting for your cup holders, whereas we are struggling in this Povo spec without such things. Another thing it's missing back here is a wireless charge pad, but you do have a couple of USB ports. Like throughout the whole car, there's loads of USB-C ports. In the ceiling, there is also a little camera that I guess would mean the people in the front would be able to keep an eye on who's in the back. But if you're a rock god on your way back from a gig, there's a clever little suede cover that you can put over that and get up to rock god things in the back of this thing, which is probably exactly what you'd want to be doing in a vehicle such as this. There's also sensible things like a nice little touch light there. There's a little coat hook as well, but I haven't been able to find a vanity mirror, and you'd imagine there'd be a few vain people sat in these that would want to make use of that. Down at my feet, there's part of a Yamaha 30 speaker audio system, so you imagine that's utterly pumping. And like any good limousine, you absolutely have to have a fridge, which you just press the button and out it pops. Perfectly innocent here today was just a can of soft drink, but that stays nicely cool for whatever you want to enjoy your trip with. Oh God, I just want one of these, don't you? So the third row, at the touch of a button, these middle chairs roll forward really quite nicely on their runners. It gives you lovely, easy access to walk through. Or there's an alternative, you can just about walk through to get into the back row between the two seats. Now back here, these rear seats are actually absolutely gorgeous to sit in as well. There's just not much space. You're depending on how generous the guy in front of you will be, but everything is soft, spongy touch. This is really nice underneath. But I'd lobby for getting the 6-seat version where you've just got 2 seats back here, because this middle seat is pretty firm and not exactly roomy. And it's very well appointed back here as well. Really nice, wide, soft armrest, drinks holder. I've got a pull-down sunshade as well, but you've got to do that yourself. USB-C ports as well, little holders for your phone, and you've got that both sides as well. So you're going to be traveling premium economy back here as opposed to the business class ahead of you. As we're setting off, my first complaint about this car is, even though you've got that fantastic giant screen in front of me, Zeekr's made sure everything is going through it, and that includes my side mirrors and, really annoyingly, my ventilation. It's clever when you get into the ventilation screen, but I've got my eyes off the road for a long time where I'm finding where I need to go, and just using my finger I can change the ventilation direction and fan speed and temperature, which, yeah, it's all rather lovely and clever looking through the screen, but it's not actually terribly practical, including adjusting your mirrors as well. It just give us some proper buttons, Zeekr. As for the performance, well, it is, as alluded to before, absolutely mega, which, if you ask me, is a bit needlessly excessive, because it's a people mover after all. But what I'm going to do is just come to a stop, and what I notice is, from the get-go, there's actually a bit of a delay, and it doesn't feel that rapidly fast off the mark, even though it claims 4.5 seconds to 100 kilometers an hour. Now the difference is your rolling acceleration. When you stomp on the throttle, when you've got a bit of speed up already, the response is absolutely mega. It really does shift, and these things are 3 tons almost, remember, with me on board, so it's phenomenal how this thing shifts so rapidly. And part of the reason is for the giant battery. Of course, a battery that size also means the charge time is going to be right up there. And even though it's got a 205 kilowatt charge speed, it takes half an hour to go from 10 to 80% with an ideal DC public charger. If you use 11 kilowatt AC charging, it's going to be taking you something like 13.5 hours. But on our test track here, we've got a private closed test track, and I've just put my foot down on the straight, and it's amazing how quiet this thing remains. That's 170 we've just reached, and I'll stand on the brakes now because the corner's coming, but it just remains so quiet. It's very, very softly sprung, so each bounce you do feel, that's for sure, but it is remarkably well composed. You just think this thing would be in its element cruising along the Autobahn at 200 and something. Now, what can I tell you about the cornering? Well, it's deeply surprising, actually. You've got dual chamber air suspension in each corner of this car, and it works magnificently. It's sitting incredibly flat through some of these tight corners, and no chauffeur in the world, unless he's trying to get away with his incredibly criminal client, is going to be driving as I'm driving it now. But it's sitting nicely. I'm not getting any protests from the tyres, helped by them being Michelin Pilot Sports, of course, which is adding plenty of grip on this nice dry track. But I'm amazed that something weighing 3 tons is able to change direction this cleanly, smoothly and comfortably. It's a really good job, well done. That said, it is at its best when you're cruising along on a nice straight bit of road, taking things very calm, because it is a little bit floaty around these corners, and I'd imagine if you sat in the back, you want to be taking things a bit smoother, which reminds me of something. Why the hell am I sitting up here? I don't care what this thing's like to drive. I want to know what it's like being chauffeured sat in the back of this thing. Let's do that. Now this is more like it. So I've employed my chauffeur to see exactly what my ride comfort will be in the back. I mean, early signs are fantastic because I'm able to lay straight out. The passenger seat I've folded way forward so I can get my legs out to full stretch. And yeah, I must say, under this panoramic roof, but there's a few bumps at about highway speed, and it's certainly floaty. It's super soft and cushy, which I suppose is exactly what you'd expect from a vehicle like this. And yeah, in no way unpleasant, but just be aware that, yeah, I'm feeling that you might get a little bit motion sickness if you've had a fancy big lunch and some champagne as well. But what I do like is how I can put the request in to my chauffeur for exactly what I want, because I have the buttons here for my seat, but Daniel, could you please turn on my air-conditioned seat? Actually, make my seat heated. Daniel, move my seat forward, please. Daniel, is the champagne cooled by now? Yeah, he's battling to go through the screen, so even excellent chauffeurs still have trouble without proper physical buttons, it seems. Actually, drive on, Daniel. I'm sick of waiting. Certainly, as we cruise round the corners nice and slowly, yeah, it is a bit bouncy, but I think if you take it nice and easy, that's going to be the absolute ideal. But let's be honest, these sort of vehicles are going to be used to get you to the theatre, maybe sit on the highway, get you home from the airport, or take you to very important business meetings, which will generally be city driving, you'd imagine, with very few corners. And what is lovely is that giant windscreen that I can still see through. That's like watching a giant IMAX cinema of what's about to come ahead. But I almost forgot that I have my television that I can tap into. Now I can block out the vulgar view of my chauffeur's head and enjoy some YouTube instead. Or maybe just make some business calls. It's all rather wonderful, actually. I could see myself living with one of these. Yeah. How much did you say one of these is, Daniel? 130,000. Yeah, okay. Get 4. Well, that was, of course, loads and loads of fun, but let's actually look at this Zeekr 009 as something you might actually buy. We see the brand has only been in Australia for about 5 minutes, but Aussies have shown they don't really mind trying out an obscure Chinese brand, especially if it's electrified like our people mover here. But even so, I can't see many private buyers going for one of these things. It is $136,000 before on roads after all. But absolutely, I can see fancy hotels, I can see luxury chauffeurs picking up one of these as a point of difference to show their clients. It's a cheaper alternative to the Lexus LM and the Mercedes-Benz EQV, and also a classier and more luxurious alternative to the LDV MIFA 9. If you consider the kit, the business class luxury inside, that phenomenal performance, and also its general comfort for everyday use, it doesn't look bad value at all. It really looks like nothing else on the road as well. And if you're lucky enough to be the one sat in the back, you are not going to be disappointed with the mad features. There's everything packed in this like a luxury limousine should have. You want for nothing. My real bugbear with it is its practicality and use as a proper people mover. The boot is compromised, those rear seats as well, the way they fold forwards to compromise the middle row. That is a real problem with this car. But if you can overlook that, or if you don't think you need it, it's an absolutely fantastic choice. It has surprised the hell out of me, and I think people that have seen it and gone through it would agree as well. I'd absolutely love to see lots of these on the road. I'd love even more if the next time I got picked up from the airport, it's in one of these. Of course, I want to know your thoughts as well. What do you reckon? Is the luxury there? Is the price right? Are Zeekr going to work in this country? Please leave your comments in the section below. Subscribe if you've not already done so. And as ever, thank you for watching Chasing Cars.